back to the Solitary Practice Podcast. This week, I've been making dice. We have a sawmill here, so there's often a lot of scrap wood available for small projects, and since we don't waste anything if we can avoid it, I'm always looking for ways to use the extra pieces. A few years ago, I started using some of the scrap to make magical dice. Originally, the dice looked like normal dice, with an emotion tied to each of the numbers on the side. So, 1 was sadness, 2 was joy. You get the idea. So whenever you rolled the die, whichever number came up on top triggered an emotion in the roller. And so I tested that out at Gathering, where people were playing Yahtzee, and you can imagine the fun that 5 emotion dice caused every time there was a roll. It was a really wild dinner party. We had a great time. So I've made some more of those. I've also done kind of an inverse on that, in which when instead of it being tied to the roller, it would, I guess, interact with anybody else that was at the table. So if you're, playing Yahtzee, and there's 3 of you, whoever rolled the dice, the other 2 people would get whatever the, barrage of emotions that came up from the dice were, as opposed to it being the roller. So 2 different ways to use those dice. I imagine there's probably more, but that was just the 2 I tested out and played with originally. My original set was made out of pine. It was nothing fancy. All of these things are made by hand. I cut them by hand. I sand them by hand. I carve out the numbers by hand. Sometimes I wood burn them. Different combinations. I have all different little tools that I use. But probably the most important thing is they're made by hand. I personally spend a lot of time with them, and as I'm making them, I'm also forming the magic that goes into them. So I know what I'm going to make before I get started, and then as I craft them, I am infusing them with what I want them to do. Since the results were so good, I tried to, branch out, do different types of wood, different types of dice. I currently make zodiac dice, numerology dice, astrological dice, regular dice, similar to those motion dice, and then also a very, very basic divination die. As far as other kinds of dice I've made, I have some that I've only made a set or 2 of. They're really not a public consumption die. So I have a nice set of fate dice, in which there are 3, and each one is made from a different wood, and basically it is exactly what it sounds like. It's used for reading fate. There's another die to tell me what I need to know. So similar to a divination die, except it's more like a divination scrying combo, which probably makes no sense to anybody but me, but it's a nice little die. I'm kind of fond of it. It takes some getting used to when using it. It's not like a plug and play as much as the other dice are. Once you know how to use it, though, I find it's very effective, and it's a great little die to use. Then I have what I kind of jokingly call the die. It's a single die made of ironwood, and when you roll it, it will change your fate. The testing on that was a wild ride. It was kind of brutal. Obviously, I tested it on myself, and it sparked off roughly a year and a half of just wild change. And it certainly works. I'll never roll it again, that's for sure. Once I was certain it worked, and, it was exactly what I wanted it or planned for it to be. It's probably maybe a little more effective than I wanted it to be, but it met the goals. So once I was certain it was good, I made one other die, and I sent it on its way. The original is still with me. I keep it locked away in a secure location. There's no danger of anybody, accidentally rolling that die. And it's going to stay that way because it is a very, very effective die. I think my favorite set, though, is the numerology dice. I got a little crazy with them. They glow in the dark. They're a little bit more challenging to decipher, but I also went and made a customized rabbit fur throwing mat, and I have some very particular stones embedded in that mat. It was a little bit extravagant, even for me. So while I don't get to use those much, they have a fantastic feel about them, and they seem to be the dice that I get along with the best. So my vote is always for the numerology dice. And about this time of year, it's snowing about every second day, and so I have a little more time on my hands. I am working on making some dice. I have some blanks that I pre-cut earlier in the fall, and then I just set them aside on my workbench in the workroom. And it is fairly simple to just get in there and start making sets of dice. while I'm doing that, I'm able to spend some time thinking about things that are going on. While I'm working on these dice, lately, I've been thinking about all the recent developments. There's been an avalanche of demands lately that's pretty much par for the course this time of year. Unfortunately, there's a lot more people than there are me's, like running around this particular plane. There's one of me and there's a lot of them. So I am constantly reprioritizing my schedule, cleaning up messes, and covering everything from what somebody's going to eat to dinner to, who's getting plowed out to somebody dying. I have a full range of requests and issues on the book right now. But ignoring the petty annoyances for a moment, I've been pondering forms for a few weeks now. It's not really unusual for me to take on different forms. Occasionally, I don't even bother with the form at all. Sometimes I just hitch a ride in something. Always an interesting experience. It doesn't know I'm there, and I just kind of do the ride along. Depends on the day. Anyway, occasionally something happens that isn't particularly noteworthy at first, but over time, I start to discern a pattern or a trend, which could mean something, or sometimes it means nothing. Basically, I have to decide which one it is, and then hopefully my decision is the correct one. A while back, I had an experience as a version of a crow, and I've pondered it enough, looking for information kind of threaded through it or hidden in it. I guess probably hidden in it is going to be the more popular term. It's not really like that. It's more threaded through it, but we'll go with hidden in it. And basically, I'm just looking to recognize the information that it gave me as it shows up. That information is making a lot more sense now than it did even when I first had the experience. Afterwards there's the recap and I think things over. And you could tell that there were things there, but it wasn't making as much sense to me as it makes now. Thankfully, I spent some time committing the experience to memory, not just recording it for future reference. I always record any of these experiences for future reference, but I don't generally spend as much time focused on them. This one here, I just it had a feel to it that there was something in there, so I spent a lot more time focusing on it, and I'm kind of glad I did. So I'm not going to recount the whole experience today, but now that I've actually run through most of what it was telling me, things are a little more obvious, and I am rather annoyed about that. It seems extremely obvious now. It was not quite as obvious before. I'd like to say I could have avoided a lot of this, but I know how this kind of game is played, and I was getting here one way or another. There's even a subtle dig in the experience about how I would have tried to get out of it if I'd been given any other option, which is both right, and I suppose I could see the humor in that. I don't know, what can I say? At least one thing knows me pretty well. Anyway, things have been quiet, and I've been kind of laying low since the issue with the blonde. I did resume going out a bit, basically just visiting planes and universes and looking around, not really doing anything in particular. Sometimes not doing anything is more important than doing things. Just been traveling around, and on the whole, it's been a pretty enjoyable experience. Things have gone quite well for, well, several days, and eventually I was over near a popular crossing where sometimes a magical flea market of sorts is set up. And I enjoyed visiting that in the past. They had some really fascinating stuff in it. So since I was close, I swung by to see if it was happening. It's not always ongoing. I don't really get what the schedule is because so many different places intersect there. I'm not sure which time they're using. So I'm never sure if the flea market is open, so to speak. So since I was there, I went over and I checked. They were not. It was pretty much empty, just the normal, I guess, hubbub. Not that it's really loud or anything like that, but it was busy. There was lots of crossing. Nothing interesting going on. So my options were to go somewhere else or head out into the surrounding countryside. I've been out in that area once or twice. It is an interesting kind of area. There's lots of little dips and valleys and just things going on. So I figured I would go out that way and just see what I could see. I hadn't fully explored it, so it wouldn't hurt to go out and have a look around. And I hadn't gone really more than a mile or so before I could feel the blonde coming up behind me. And I can't say I was totally shocked because clearly it's perfectly possible to track someone anywhere. And given how things went the last time, I was pretty sure that once I came back out and started venturing around, it was gonna show up. Anyway, I thought that the blonde was coming up behind me. I made a foolish assumption in that he would take the form that he normally takes, but when I knew it was fairly close and I turned around, he was not in the form that he normally takes. He was a large, and it happened very fast. So my initial impression was copper dragon. I mean, obviously, it was him, but seriously, a dragon? I'm not much for dragons personally. I don't do a lot with dragons. It's just not my thing, area of interest, which is somewhat humorous. But I'm not really into the whole dragon thing. I know some people really love dragons. Not really my thing. I was pretty unimpressed to have a multi-ton bundle of aggression bearing down on me. So initially, I didn't bother shifting forms or anything, but the scuffle got serious after a bit, and the blonde was not backing down. Not going to lie, it was something that really ticked me off. Ragey me is not something even I want to deal with. And I've got a long fuse, but when that fuse runs out, nothing good ever comes of it. I spent a lot of years working on tempering my temper. Around here on the mundane plane, my temper's legendary for like blackout rages if you can trigger it. It's pretty much impossible to do at this point, but well, I was young once and didn't quite have the control I have now. So let's just say it's been memorable for the people on the mundane plane who have encountered it. It's worse when I'm out and about and working on a magical level. He got one good shot in, and it kind of tripped me over the edge. I was really, really mad about it. And I'll spare you the details, but essentially, I shifted forms and struggle ensued and ended up killing him. Not like destroyed that particular form, but like annihilated him in every form. Just completely wiped the map of him, all the maps. When I caught my breath and I wasn't so focused on, not dying, I was pretty distraught for a couple of reasons. Normally, I don't ever destroy anything. I mean, we're all taught it is part of our training here. We know how to hunt, like on the mundane plane, but also part of my training was, defense. It's just something that magical defense was something that was taught to me. So, I mean, technically I have it, I just don't really use it. Normally I create, bring life, but destroying things on this kind of level, that's not something I normally do. And this was not just, some random thing. This is someone that I'd known since I was a child. He wasn't really a friend, but he was a companion, and we did spend some time, walking, talking, had some different adventures together. And then finally, and probably more disturbing than even all of that, I was absolutely horrified to find that when I changed form, my form changed into a golden dragon, of all the things. It was so ostentatious and blingy. You should have seen the claws on my feet. The only good thing about it was the shock from seeing that form that I'd taken was a good distraction from what I actually did. So I guess that's a positive. I'm still low-key horrified about it, though. I'll never do that again if I can help it. Either part. So once I got myself calmed down enough, I just decided not to waste time changing back and then traveling home. So I just stepped out into the void space and reassumed my customary form. I had to let myself settle down for a few days before I could even start to do some research into dragons, and I can't say anything I found made me feel any better about it, so I've just decided to ignore the entire gold dragon thing and move on. It didn't take long to figure out that just moving on was going to be a little bit of an issue. Apparently, I've had a rather large power bump off of that, and I'm not really sure why. What I do know is that when I go out and about now, I'm literally melting through realities. I'd be thrilled to go back down to God mode because at least I could, I don't know, I had a handle on how to dampen that when you shift up into God mode. But this is like a step over that at least. I'm like an energetic beacon when I'm out and about now. It's almost like I don't know, like a magical lighthouse or something. Holy cow. It is like a light show. Even if I try to dampen it down as best I can, it still practically oozes out, and I don't like that at all. There are a lot of people out there who probably want magical power and would love it on that level, but trust me, it is an absolute pain. I can't imagine anybody wanting this level of irritation, which brings us around to that old teacher that I mentioned that was kind of like a little parental dead entity that showed up a while back, and I was like, we'll see why it's here. Should have known right then. The more this has disrupted me magically and kind of had me a little off kilter, it's not really so much the volume of energy that's causing me the issue, it's the finesse and to some extent the strength it takes to hold it and focus it and get it to do what you want. At least direct it a little bit. Right now it's kind of everywhere. I've got half my mind on that all the time right now, working on keeping it dampened down and figuring out how to adjust everything to accommodate it until I can either get rid of it or figure out how to suppress it. So, of course, now's the time that everybody's decided that I should be responsible for being their personal concierge on the mundane plane. I mean, seriously, these people can't decide what they're going to have for dinner, and that's not like a joke. That's serious. Usually before 6 in the morning, 3 different people have asked me what I think that they should have for dinner tonight. I don't care if they have dinner, quite frankly, but this is the level of handling everybody's problems I'm at the moment. Normally, it's not really an issue and I don't pay much attention to it because I can do all the things they're asking, sure. That's not a problem. I can do that normally on a normal day, running normal stuff. But can I do it while trying to master a new volume of energy magically that after destroying something that I was at least on some level attached to and having all my usual coping strategies blown out of the water? It hasn't really been a smooth process, that's for sure. I've had to get a little creative. I dumped the anxious, overthinking, mourning part of myself off with the parental entity because that seemed like the best place for it. Parental entity can fuss over that while I section myself out to get the rest handled because that seems to be like the most efficient way to do it right now. The problems and requests keep popping up on the mundane side, and while it is a huge aggravation to have to deal with people who literally want you to not only supply the coffee but make it and deliver it to each recipient like in their preferred manner, really just I can't express to you the really, really stupid things mundane people that are perfectly capable of taking care of it for themselves if they were to apply themselves a little bit. They're just actively choosing not to at this point. I think everyone, like at work, has lost their reading comprehension ability entirely. We're at the point where I have to reread them emails aloud and they're still not quite fully understanding the sentences that they themselves wrote. You add in a full moon and the rapidly approaching shortest day of the year, and it's a special sort of free-for-all around here. I don't normally call this time of year the annual endurance challenge for nothing. Apparently this year, we're just going to try a new format because this is not normally how that annual challenge runs. I did have some thought that if I really leaned in, I could get out in front of this. But then the tiers started having issues, and I have 4 tiers, 6 people, and that's a lot of weaknesses to watch. They're also priorities over and above literally everything. Only one of those tiers isn't reporting any issues. I'm assuming because that tier was designed and, onboarded differently than the other 3 tiers. That tier is particularly different and has some very unique aspects to it. So that tier isn't reporting any issues, and I'm glad about that because I'm not even sure what I would do if all 4 tiers had decided to fall apart in a 48-hour window. The other tiers have had very plausible things go wrong, but again, it's within a 48-hour window, which is kind of suspicious. It's not unusual for 1 or 2 of them to, have a cold or a cough. It's not going to ring any immediate alarm bells, and with everything else going on, tad bit unfocused. Am I tracking them? Yes, but was I getting really concerned about it? No. It's a little frustrating, and I started to worry a little bit because I'm off balance and it's affecting the tiers, or at least that's what I was thinking, that perhaps the tiers are encountering issues because I'm off balance and that maybe I have a little back feed going on and it's starting to feed into the tiers and cause them issues. So that worries another distraction that I don't need. And it's kind of irritated me even further, and we're getting into that cycle of just being really super irritated all the time. Now, my family knows that if I'm angry, and it has to be legitimately angry, I can't just be like in a mood. If I'm legitimately angry over something, because it's a valid anger, I guess, it will fix itself, and that fix will come fast. It happens enough that if you live here in the house with me, you cannot miss it. So here I am, I'm frustrated and irritated, and that was just to begin with. Now there's this avalanche of silly requests. My tears start having problems. It's just one thing right after another. So I'm a bit ragey. I decide not to bother trying to rein it in. Normally I would, go through a whole list of coping mechanisms that would probably help me throttle down the rage. But at this point, I don't even want to bother trying to rein it in. I'm a little too far gone. I'm spread pretty thin. So I don't really even feel like bothering to try to add another iron to this fire. My to-do list is big enough. So I just let it happen. The priority right now is tamping down this power and getting the tears taken care of. Not necessarily in that order. I do not care about attending holiday gatherings or who needs coffee. Those are things I'm not even going to worry about, and I am not fixing the weather for anybody. So outwardly, nothing really looks different. I look calm. Everything is fine. I look very efficient. A few people have told me they don't know how I get so much done, and I look very calm and efficient, and it's just so wonderful. These poor fools, they have no idea. Absolutely none. Very few people right now, though, will remain in my presence for more than a few minutes. If they can avoid me, they're doing it. And that includes like immediate family, everybody. There's only one person who's been brave enough to ask me if I'm okay. Quite frankly, we're lucky it was only that one particular person because that one's probably the only one that's exempt from rage. My entire schedule has managed to rearrange itself in the last 24 hours. The mundane people are giving me wide berth in public settings. My husband is finding that hilarious. We had to go out to a store. I had a list and I took off, and apparently he just followed with the cart and laughed through the whole store, and I could not figure out what his humor was with it, but apparently he's watching people scurry, and he thinks that that's quite funny. I don't know. I guess if he's happy. I've been excused from 3 engagements that I didn't want to go to in the beginning, but would have gone to if I had to. They have decided suddenly that they no longer need me, or the things have been canceled outright, like completely wiped off the board. People have stopped leaving me phone messages entirely. I have not gotten a message on my phone in probably a good 12 hours now, and that's a relief. And then we have one person who last week supposedly only had days to live, and so they were calling me in because they wanted me to come down. Person was on comfort care, wasn't going to make it. Could I come? And I have these tears that, sorry, but they're outranking the dying person, so have not been down there. I feel a little bad about it. I do know the dying person. Well, not recently, but I used to know them. And it was nice of the family to call me in, but the dying person isn't dead. Their niece messaged me an update about an hour ago, and basically they're like just doing their thing down there, still talking to people, just kind of weak and hanging out. Everybody's mystified. I'm not. I kind of know where that's coming from. So basically, things are starting to get themselves together. I got really irritated, and then as normal, that went and fixed a lot of my problems. It will not fix all of my problems, but only the stuff that I am legitimately irritated with. I'm like, all right, things are going to start getting a little better. And then my third tier gets injured. And this is where I start to get some different concerns. Not because the tier was injured. They aren't the most cautious about their safety to begin with, so I can't say that the injury and the circumstances around it are a huge surprise, but also it's a fairly significant injury, and some of the auxiliary things around it kind of are pinging the warning bells for me. I can't be 100% sure. I do need to take some time probably and track that back, but I'm just going to say that an injury to a tier is something that is not allowed. It would not happen. My sole purpose with the tier is to preserve it and keep it alive, so I begin to wonder if I really am feeding back into these tiers or if I've got something else going on, which is legitimate. I mean, they're a weakness for me, so worth looking at. But anyway, basically this tier obtained a significant injury and just carried on with their day. Bled for hours, my entire first aid, and I have a substantial amount of gauze, and like I keep it on hand all the time because I'm always having to doctor things here. They've gone through it all. So for hours, they're like bleeding profusely and just didn't say anything to anyone. Carried on with their day. I spoke with them in passing, and I was kind of like, wow, they're a little off today. But it wasn't enough to really raise any alarm. And then they interacted with other people, and nobody really noticed a problem. And then they encountered one of my other tiers. And of course, because everything gets reported back to me in some fashion, that tier came and said, hey, other person's bleeding a lot. Do you have any input on that? They had assumed that I had looked at it, which I had not. So, of course, I went and cornered the injured tear, found out what was going on, and got things taken care of immediately. But the wound location and the look of it is odd. It's deep in an odd spot and shallower where you wouldn't think it would be shallow. It is definitely a different thing. The tear knows how it happened, but it took, well, magical intervention basically to get them to give you a full sentence answer as to what happened if you didn't exert some kind of, I guess we're going to say, power on them to compel them to tell you exactly what happened. They just rambled off when they answered and did not give me a straight answer, which was also a bit strange. And it wasn't just me, like the medical staff and everything. It was really odd. Originally, I was a bit concerned that maybe I was the cause of the tear issue. Let's be honest, I am wildly unstable right now. I don't have burner here, and the land's asleep, so there is nothing that I would normally use as a stabilizer that's available. My magic gets out of hand sometimes, but the one thing I'm completely certain of is that it would not injure a tear like that. Just would not happen. If anything, the nature of the injury is kind of making me suspect that maybe I have, like, an actual attack going on, which hasn't happened in years. And let me tell you that that is not it's never my first answer. When things go wildly wrong, usually I look at me because I'm having some issues. And let's be honest, I'm technically having some issues right now trying to master this enormous amount of power that I was not prepared to manage. And then, with everything else, obviously there's added stresses. So the first thing I'm looking at is me. And then the second thing I'm looking at is stuff just happens sometimes, and sometimes you can mitigate that and make things work, and then it'll level back out. But the absolute last thing I would look at was actual form of magical attack. I haven't seen one of those or had one of those that is legitimate in years. Even now, I'm kind of skeptical that that would be the answer. I'm kind of weighing everything out at the moment. But sitting here with the dice and, just kind of thinking about the crow experience, and I'm contemplating the angry maternal entity that I saw with the blonde, and, kind of just wondering, was she mad because she knew I'd kill him? Was the tear issue not me at all? And her attempting to extract a bit of revenge or draw me out? Who knows? Maybe rather than try to tamp all the energy down, maybe I should be trying a different route. So that was like the most recent chain of thought this afternoon. If the crow experience is any indicator of how this will go, then at least I've got some intel to work with, so it's worth contemplating a little further. I have lots to think about, obviously, and I'll stop here for today, I think. As always, if you have any questions or have a topic you'd like to hear more about, you can contact me through my website, thesolitarypractice.com, where you'll have the option to send me an email or leave me a brief voice message. As always, I appreciate your feedback, and thanks again. I will see you next week.